Well, here it is, semi-sunshiny Friday morning after what, in my part of the city, were some pretty rough thunder showers last night.
Yeah, we had some boomers, and in the mid evening, as it were. They didn't last long, but you're right, they were intense. They got your attention. Glad to have you with us this morning for the Exiles. We're going to spend almost all of our time today talking about what is going on in Minneapolis. If you watched the TV show yesterday, and we sincerely hope you did, Kevin and I both shared feelings with our viewers about how god-awful that video was of that police officer kneeling on that man's neck. The man is obvious in distress, says that he can't breathe, and now we know that he was dead at the scene. They had to pronounce him officially at their big charity hospital, Hennepin Memorial. It's their equivalent of Bellevue or Cook County, or what big charity used to be, University Hospital. But this was an awful occurrence. Now, this morning, there were more fires. A police precinct apparently was totally burned by rioters. I know people say they're demonstrating. Some of them are demonstrating peacefully. Some of them are rioting. I mean,
Demonstrators don't burn or steal.
exactly.
Rioters burn or steal.
And of course,
Sorry, I'm not going to
you're going to see the rioters on
slide like some news media will.
Yeah, you're going to see the rioters on television. You're not going to see the peaceful demonstrators who are out in front of the decedent's church. I heard that they were there and they were praying. You know, you're not going to see those. You're going to see the people that are actually rioting and looting. In a very weird twist, I actually happened to be flipping through the channels and saw this live. A CNN crew that was in an area, and they were reporting live saying, the state police have been in here and they've restored order. And the state police come up to him, and it's a four-person crew. Gee, who's got money for a four-person crew anymore? And the reporter says, do you need us to move? We'll go wherever you tell us you want us to be. And the troopers are just standing there. And after about 5 minutes, one of the troopers walks up and kind of whispers at the reporter, says, "Oh, you're arresting me now." "Okay, can you tell me what you're arresting me for?" "Okay, you'll tell me later." "All right." And
I'll tell you later.
Yeah, he cuffs him up, and then they come and get the camera crew and the reporter. It's all live. It's all going on live, and everybody was very cooperative. The troopers were not manhandling them in any way. The CNN crew was like, "Okay, we'll go with you. You need to get my hands behind my back, fine." And I was watching it, and I was like, "Oh, there's going to be a phone call made here." Well, about an hour after this happened, the governor...
Phone call was made?
Yeah, the governor got a phone call from the president of CNN. The governor explained that was out of bounds, or as he put it, over the line to arrest them, and ordered their immediate release, and he apologized. But, I mean, what the hell is going on in the state of Minnesota? I mean, in my personal opinion and my observation, having been there many, many times, knowing some people from Minnesota, this is the most laissez-faire state in the Union. They make California look like the Third Reich. And I just don't get this.
Well, let's talk about it. This is a law enforcement issue. This started with law enforcement and what I think is a lack of management of the police department or certain police officers. So we asked to join us today former Baton Rouge Police Chief Pat Englade, who is now the head of CALEF, the Capital Area Law Enforcement Foundation. You've been around the block. You've recruited cops. You've trained cops. You know how this game is played. So what are your impressions? What you saw in Minneapolis, Pat?
I don't know if I have any answers for any of this. If you go on textbook on anything, none of this makes sense. First of all, Bill, you can't unarrest somebody.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that. We're sorry we arrested you, and now we're not going to arrest you. I'm not sure how that works, even with a call from the governor. But I've watched just about everything that everybody else has, and it's just a big hole there that doesn't seem to make much sense as to why this occurred this way. The training, I mean, unless there's something else underneath that we're not seeing completely. There was no reason, once you had this man in handcuffs and secure with 4 officers around him, which pretty much is all you're going to need to take control
pretty
of somebody.
secure to me.
You get him in a car, and you can hear the background talking, and why are you doing this to this man? Policeman with pretty much sense says we need to de-escalate this situation, and let's get the hell out of here, and put him in a car and let's go. But for some reason, there was this kneeling that went on for and
Nearly 8 minutes.
Yeah, it was almost
none of
8
that
minutes.
makes any sense to me from a law enforcement perspective.
Let me ask you this, and I'm going to preface this by saying I know every department is a little bit different, but is that technique a standard technique, kneeling on someone's neck? Is that a standard technique as far as you know?
No. There's a number of things that will happen when you're making what they would call a violent arrest, where this guy's physically we're going at it.
Yeah, he's resisting.
He's resisting, and we're trying to just gain control of him the best way we can. And the idea is to get them on their stomachs and get their hands behind them and secure them, and then you've got him where you want him at that point. No, this doesn't reach any. I don't know of anybody. I mean, historically over the years, there were a number of people that were killed in New York and around the country with the choke hold that was used to cut off people's wind to make them submit. They found out that was killing people around the country when they were using it, so it was outlawed in almost every state in the country. So, no, I don't have an idea why that situation just lasted that long for that period of time with a knee on somebody's neck that is already he's submitted at that point.
Yeah, he's cuffed.
He's not doing anything.
Yeah, I didn't see any apparent fight left in that man from the point that the video picked up. Now, I don't know how much squirming he may have been doing up until that point, but still, I mean, you're talking about you could cut off their airway, you could damage their spinal cord, you could damage their spine. I mean, there's so much damage you could do to somebody by putting the weight of your body on their neck.
Well, everybody has a use of force policy, and the use of force tells you if this doesn't work, you do this. If this doesn't work, you do this. Of course, the last one's deadly force. That would be the last. But you would think there's a number of things that could have happened prior to holding this guy down. If he's not submitting, then you tase him if you have to. I'm certain that a city of that size probably has tasers. I'm sure one of those guys had a taser. Mm-hmm. That pretty much will make you submit at that point. I've seen them work, and it works efficiently. So, again, why it got from handcuffed to the ground, to the knee, to the neck, only they can answer that question.
And Pat, we now know from a still photograph taken from across the street that 2 more officers were on the lower parts of his body. That cop that we saw in that video had 2 cops to his right, also kneeling on that suspect. Now, I could see the amount of time if they were like, we need to get a unit in here, if the unit wasn't right there. But as you could see in the video, the police unit was right there. So the question on my mind, what on earth possessed them not to just stuff him in the back seat?
I have no idea. Typically, 2 officers can control a subject once he's handcuffed. I mean, he can roll around, he can bump into you, but 2 officers usually can control a guy that's in. Now, there's circumstances where somebody's hyped up on some kind of
PCP
yeah,
or something?
Yeah, something that just makes him absolutely crazy, and sometimes you have to tase him down to get control of him. But again, I'm at a loss for words for this. There's nothing in any handbook in this country that I'm going to go out on a limb and say that would say it's okay to do what they did.
Let me ask you this. I want you to put your police chief's hat back on for a minute. It struck me, I mean, I actually went, uh-oh, when within a few hours, the Minneapolis police chief said all 4 officers have been fired. Not suspended, fired. I mean, that was like a bell going off. It was like, that was pretty quick for a police chief to take that kind of action under most circumstances, wouldn't you think?
Well, it depends on what if they're operating under a police union or an FOP. They have certain rights that are available to them before they answer any question. Obviously, the chief felt compelled to do something immediately. We couldn't have done it here. You couldn't have done it here in Baton Rouge. You would put them on administrative leave pending an outcome. Everybody has their, it's just like anybody in courtroom. Every officer has his right, his day in court before you terminate him. And here in Baton Rouge, we do you tell Kevin, I'm suspending you, putting you on administrative leave. You're to stay home. You're not to go anywhere. You're not to do anything police related. We're going to hold a hearing to tell you what you're being charged with. And after that meeting, we will determine whether we fire you, suspend you, or just tell you to go home. So that's the procedure you would go through here in Baton Rouge. And that's the procedure in most police departments in this country.
I'm thinking about 99%.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering when they announced the firings, is there no police union there? Is there no due process?
I have no idea. But
Not that I necessarily feel the guy deserves due process, but, well, I feel like everybody deserves due process.
Well,
I mean,
I'm sure that will be brought up before this is over with. I don't think you've heard any of the officers make any statements so far. I'm sure they're all lawyered up by now, and they're all huddled up trying to figure out what their next move is.
There is a police union that covers the Minneapolis
of course
PD,
there is.
And they have made no statement. And it's looking like they're not going to make a statement for a few days. But there is a union that represents these officers. But, everybody's got the presumption of innocence under our Constitution.
Due process. It's all about due process. Yeah. Whether you like it or not, it's the way the system works.
Well, and the only guy who didn't get due process is the guy that's in a casket.
Exactly.
Right
now, it's been suggested, social media and other things, and I probably even said it myself, that in a lot of municipalities and a lot of different police agencies going right on up the line, from the lowest of the local yokels right on up to the federal level, that there are going to be cops that made it through the process and they're not the best of guys, and they're the kind of guys that may want to mete out a little street punishment because they think that's all the punishment that the suspect's actually going to get. You probably encountered that while you were chief.
Oh, it happens almost every day. When police get involved in a situation where somebody's combative or they're chasing a suspect all through Baton Rouge, the first thing that shoots through them is their adrenaline. So that adrenaline rush they're getting. So when you do finally get this guy, there seems to be a physical, something is going to happen physical. Even if they throw him on the ground and just all sit on top of him till they get him cuffed, that's fairly normal, and it's an adrenaline rush, and it's to be expected out of people to a certain extent. I'm not condoning any of that behavior because I think policemen have to be above and beyond controlling their emotions.
But they are only human.
They are only human, and sometimes they go a little bit over where they should have. That's just the nature of what we have to deal with what you're thinking at this point, because I know neither one of you have ever been police officers.
No.
But your survival instincts kick in.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what's going to happen. I mean, Vicki Wax I worked with Vicki Wax. She's a BRPD officer. She was a lieutenant. Vicki and I went all the way through the police department together. We were friends. She got killed right down the street.
Right where we are, right now.
Right here.
Yeah,
that's right, exactly.
Not
We're right here.
Walmart stood right
When it
on
was
this
a Walmart.
side.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's right here where we're at. And that guy overpowered her and took her gun and killed her with it. And so that survival instinct is a real thing. But if you look at stats over the country on police shootings, there's a high number of police officers that get killed with their own weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. And again, I'm not making any excuses for what happened.
But Pat, we talk about you are dealing with an unknown when you're a police officer, and somebody who's just mouthing off may suddenly throw a kick at you or pull a weapon, and I understand that. But, I have seen in Baton Rouge 4 or 5 cases that happened to be videotaped, and a couple of them got reviewed, and the officers were found to be okay. But it was always 3 or more officers, which they had in Minneapolis, They all took control of the person on the ground. They had shoulders and legs, and maybe they were leaning across their hip area, and they were saying, "Stop resisting. You're going to get hurt. Stop resisting. Give me your hand. Stop resisting." And once they had the cuffs, everybody stopped yelling, and two of the officers picked him up and took him in the car.
Yeah.
There was no reason that this guy is kneeling on this guy's neck. They could have taken him up and put him in the car.
I think that's going to be the question that everybody wants to know the answer to is, why didn't you do this? Why did you feel like you had to kneel on this guy's? We may never know that answer. I'm not sure where they'll decide to just keep their mouth shut and not say anything and let the video speak for itself. I'm not sure how they would justify this, to be honest with you. There's a million things you can say, and I saw somebody mention it earlier. It's so much more clear. There's really not much issue with the fact it's on video.
Yeah.
It's not like we're all, well, I think I saw him do this, or I thought I saw him do that. Now it's videotaped, and you see him, and with a knee into the guy's neck, and just sitting there. And again, I don't know what he can say at this point that's going to justify that action. It'd be interesting. I'd love to talk to this guy, to be honest with you.
What you're talking about, though, is the chain of evidence, and pretty much that video and testimony is the only chain of evidence that they'll have. I remember the last time a city blew up like Minneapolis was Ferguson with Michael Brown,
Right.
Which was, 2015?
Yeah.
2015. With Michael Brown, there were no witnesses. There were witnesses that weren't corroborative.
Right.
There was no videotape. There was the officer's version. There was Michael Brown didn't have a version because he was dead, and then there was one supposed eyewitness. But there was also a chain of evidence, and the one thing that told the story more than anything else was where the blood flew. And a blood expert was able to destroy the case that cop had willfully assassinated that young man. And we're not going to get that kind of science come to play here.
Yeah.
But you know what we are going to get that we haven't seen yet? They very quickly said all 4 officers' body cams were functioning and on. We're going to see 4 different angles of this, including the guy who was kneeling on top of his neck.
Well, and maybe the body cam footage will show us why this thing got to be a physical altercation to begin with. Because as I understand it, he was just trying to pass like a fake $20 bill.
Yeah, I don't even remember the circumstances, to be honest with you, but I don't think it was much. I don't know if it was a check or
It was going to be a very light charge. And I think the store camera shows him swinging his arm, whether he was trying to get off of me or whether he was trying to hit an officer, and that's when they took him down. But, none of that to me matters as someone who supports law enforcement to my very core, but who also wants to have them have the best possible face on things. None of that matters. What matters is what happened after they had him cuffed, because that's what's really going to come into play here.
I'm gonna add a little bit something to that, and I used to tell police officers this all the time. You get in a situation. Let's assume they walk up to him, and what did they say to him? You can either start a riot, literally, or you can have him cooperate with you. It's all in the delivery of what that police officer said to him. He said, "Buddy, look, we need to talk about something. If you don't mind, sir, come over to the car. Let's talk to you for a minute." That just calms that situation. When you go up to him and say, "Come here, you," and you start just throwing, what does everybody do? You do it? Yeah, everybody does it. You become very defensive.
Become defensive
and you say,
offer resistance.
Look, I don't know what you got me for, but why are you talking to me like that? That's an important, I've told people, you can make a friend or you can start a war. And it's all how you deliver something to someone. And again, if the body cameras were on, it's all going to be, we'll see how that plays. But most of these situations arise out of what a police officer may say to somebody, and then it escalates into before it's over with, we're down on the ground and we're all fighting.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that strikes me about this is that everybody has behaved in a way that was going to reflect the most poorly on who they represented. The police behaved in a way that now has people going, "See, cops are pigs," and a lot of people had already had that, feeling vindicated. That, "See, cops are pigs. They're all pigs. They're all terrible." We know that's not true. and then the citizens deciding that the way to respond to this is to burn down a precinct, torch a target, get themselves a couple of free big screen TVs, that robs me of any pathos for their argument.
It's what there's a term, mob mentality. I mean, that's basically what happened here is none of those people, I'm going to tell you, and I looked at some of the videos from the Target, none of those people in there cared one thing about this guy. It was an opportunity to use George as an excuse for them to go into a place and break the law and tear up a Target. And let's make this perfectly clear. There were whites in there just as much as there were blacks.
Yes, I noticed that.
I want to make that point up. So we had a bunch of stupid people up in that place.
Well, I think it's good when the races can get together and do something together, don't you think?
Well, they came together, and I guess in somewhat of a common cause. I'm not sure what it was.
That's the argument. It's not a race thing. This is not something black people do. This is not something white people. This is something low-life people do.
Absolutely.
People that have a poor moral code.
Well, I think I put something on Facebook yesterday and said the only way you could even think about justifying this is if they were going to break into the Target and grab a bunch of stuff and bring it to his house and give it to his family.
Yeah.
I mean, what else reason do you need to?
The Les Mis defense.
Well, I'm not sure, but look, I do not. And my history will speak for itself. You can go back and look at my numbers, look what I did. I do not condone bad behavior of police officers. I do not like it. I think they need to be held to a higher
You were
standard.
awfully strict when you came in. I do remember that.
But I thought I was fair across the board. I believe police officers have a higher responsibility. Just because somebody wants to get down on a level, you don't get down on that level with them. You're a professional. If you want to cry about being paid professionally, you want to be treated professionally, you want all these things, then you need to act professionally. So we had a lot of conversations when I was chief about what people's behavior was as far as police officers.
Pat, let's bring this topic around to the billboard. A lot of people have shared the billboard with me. I've seen the billboard. There's more than one up around town.
I've seen one for sure.
How much more can we give before we're paid a fair wage? Things like Minneapolis hurt the argument locally.
Oh, this will send ripple effects around the country. And just like Bill was saying, now we're going to paint everybody. Just because there's a guy that walks into he's whatever, and he walks into whatever, and he starts shooting up the place just because he feels like he ought to. We don't paint everybody with that same brush. But this way, police officers, just like you said, they're painted with the same. We've been trying to tell you that the police in this country are no good. This vindicates everything I've said over the years, and this is just proof of how no good they are. So why should we give them anything? And that's going to be a tough one to get over, to be honest with you.
Well, and again, here are a couple of other things that go with that. The police pay raise got stalled largely because the government was shut down and it was on its way, which we were all glad to see that the pay raise was on its way here. But the effect of this is, I remember when I was a kid and you had airplanes dropping out of the sky because the technology was new. Training people from propellers to jets sometimes was a little harder, and you had, everybody had one, United and American and Continental, and people were like, I'm afraid to get on one of those jet airliners. Now you've got the fear of cops spreading nationwide because of these four bad actors. You've got the racial overtone because it is clearly a white cop kneeling on this black guy's neck when he's in handcuffs. These are two things that hurt every legitimate law enforcement officer in this country.
Absolutely.
You're lighting a fire under the racist aspect, and when people want to spew that, they take into account every cop is a racist, even the blacks, the Latinos, the Asians. They paint them all with the same brush. And then you've got people who maybe have never had an interaction with a police officer, or if they did, maybe they thought the police officer was a little stern, And now they're saying, I feel threatened by the police, instead of, I'm glad to see them in my neighborhood or behind me on the interstate. I don't know how you get around that, Pat.
First thing parents are going to think is my child's going to end up like that. I've seen that way all over the place now.
If you don't think mom's right now, or telling the police,
Absolutely.
Police going to shoot you.
Yeah, absolutely. Or kneel on your neck. You need, and every time you say you need to, you know, let's go back to Alton Sterling. Well, you know, what was the question? If he would have complied with the officers in the beginning, would he still be alive today? Mm-hmm. We don't know. I mean, that is the question. That is a question, and it appears that this guy didn't have any chance to comply. It looked like that he was forced to comply. So, I don't know. It's going to be a tough hill for these officers around the country to get over, and try, because you're going to have the good ones are heartbroken over this because they know, for one, you never want to kill somebody you're dealing with. This idea that police officers are going out looking for somebody to kill, that's the furthest thing from the truth in the world. Nobody wants to be in a situation like this.
Worst thing that can ever happen in their lives.
Absolutely.
And it can kill their career.
Well, career's probably secondary to that, to be honest with you.
The
fact that you're going to live with killing somebody that you could have been avoided. It wasn't an accident. You just didn't fall on his neck and I broke his neck. It wasn't that. I mean, you systematically just cut the guy's breath off, and he died from, I assume he died from lack of oxygen. I really don't know what the final cause of death
we're
is
getting
gonna
it
be.
in drips and drabs, but they've already taken the statements from the two paramedics, and the paramedics tried 4 times on the scene to get a pulse and couldn't. So he died of asphyxiation.
Well, he was, and probably he may have been dead for 5 minutes before they got off of him. I mean, I don't want to speculate on these things because I don't know, but obviously the question is, why didn't y'all get off of him? What was the reason? And that's going to be the I don't know how you get past that, to be honest.
Well, these are dark days for law enforcement. I mean, look what happened to police officers in Los Angeles on the LA freeway. Be set upon by a mob on the freeway. And, lucky they didn't personally get hurt, but, I mean, cars trashed, and that's Los Angeles. That's, 1,500 miles away. And, do we need to worry about, similar things rising up in other cities?
Absolutely. You'll look, you had the situation in Baton Rouge in 2016. Just prior to that, you had the same situation in Dallas, where this guy comes in and says, police are no good, and I'm going to take me a rifle, and we're going to shoot as many as we can take out. And I think Gavin Long, whose name I don't like to mention, who was involved in the killing of 3 law enforcement officers that day in Baton Rouge, made it very clear that his motive was Alton Sterling, that the police had treated him and just murdered him, and he was going to go back and get some revenge. So, I mean, do we look at that now as a possibility of somebody thinking about this now? How many I could take out at any one point? It has ripple effects all the way through it.
That incident that you're talking about brings us to where we're going to transition a little bit and talk about, because that Gavin Long incident got you and a lot of concerned people to get vests for cops that have rifle-proof armor. We're going to talk about the capital area law enforcement and what you've got going on after we take our break. If you can hang with us for a few minutes, we're going to take our midpoint break here, folks. We will be back in about 5-6 minutes, and we will continue with former police chief Pat Anglais. We'll talk about the capital area law enforcement group and what they're doing to try to get every police officer a vest that will stop a rifle bullet. Back in a minute.